Hi again. Chapter 10 of 30 Years a Watchtower Slave by William Schnell. He's returning to America where he was born after 13 years in Germany. He's seen how bad things are in Germany theocratically as Rutherford's regime gets more and more control in the Bethel. This section is entitled Pioneers, O Pioneers. With my arrival in New York in June 1927, there came a lull in my affairs as far as my connections with the Watchtower Society were concerned. Never again was I to look upon the organization with the personal intimacy I had when I entered its portals in 1924. In all my dealings with the Society from then on, although I knew it not at this stage, I was to take the attitude and position of a skeptic. And even though I became thoroughly involved with the organization once again, it was to be a mechanical and detached involvement. Never again was it to be based on love or admiration for the Watchtower Society. I conceived my first task to be that of getting my parents and my brother and sisters to this country. I sensed that things would go from bad to worse in Germany. I realized that the national point of view, buttressed by hurt pride and fanned by unemployment and destitution, was slowly getting the upper hand, and my experiences of our being the early butt of Nazi stormtrooper tactics indicated who the scapegoats would be in time to come. All those who preserved their individuality, distinct from das deutsche Wesen, the German soul and blood, and also like all those of the Watchtower who had their own world goal, would find the concentrated hatred of the Nazis descending upon them. During this time of adjustment between 1927 and 1931, I stayed very much on the outside of things as far as the Watchtower Society was concerned. Several concerted moves were made to get me inveigled again, but since I was unknown, these moves were not followed up when I declined. However, as my father and other relatives, all staunch Jehovah's Witnesses, let me reread that. They're not witnesses yet, are they? All staunch Watchtower adherents from Berlin became acclimated in this country once again. They began to associate with the local and Brooklyn congregations. For several years they attended the German language congregations in Brooklyn. I sensed a constant pressure being brought upon me to enter again into Watchtower service. My reluctance, owing to my experiences made in Magdeburg, was cleverly brushed aside with the remark that things were not as dictatorial here as they had been in Germany. Little did they know, however, that while things were not yet as dictatorial in congregation circles here, yet the Watchtower Society, which had instigated the march towards theocracy in Germany, had kept careful note and record of our advances, mistakes, and successes in Germany. In fact, they had a thoroughgoing blueprint which by 1929 they wanted to begin putting into operation in America. Subhead now is America Lags. As far as my heart was concerned, I was definitely on the outside of things, and I looked upon the Watchtower Society disconnectedly and objectively. I noticed that in every way it was far behind the organization in Germany, which had been totally organized and which flourished under the Society tutelage. The American printery in 1927 was far behind ours in Magdeburg in efficiency and capacity. They sought to correct that in 1929, and then with greater facilities were ready to go ahead according to the pattern etched out in Germany. But the coming of the Great Depression in America stopped that effectively for a time and created a highly profitable Watchtower intermezzo. And the congregations too, they were here in about the same stage that we in Germany had been in the early 20s, that is even up to 1924. Elders still held sway in many congregations, and many Bible students still refused fully to bow to the Watchtower Society. Witnessing work was largely carried on only during weekdays as yet. Sunday witnessing was beginning to take place, but only as it had been in Germany in 1924 by the newer elements or such who were naturally extroverts and liked that kind of thing for its own sake. Service directors had about the same influence at this time in the congregations as had ours in early 1925, before the great purges. In fact, everything was much slower than it had been in Germany. Next heading is why the delay. Being of an inquisitive mind and eager to analyze things, I set out to discover the reason for this delayed action. Knowing the Watchtower Society's purposes and goal, and having lived with it as it unfolded in my 3.5 years stay in Magdeburg, Bethel, I wanted to know why, in its own bailiwick, so to speak, the Society did not employ the same methods, especially since these had proved so successful in Germany. Inquiries revealed, to my surprise, that things had to go slower here because of the character of the people. Americans rebelled at regimentation of any kind and would have to be led into a position by induction and by use of emotional and business tactics. Besides, Americans had not undergone such hardships in World War I as had we in Europe. They were therefore not in an unsettled condition of circumstances and living which proved so advantageous to the society in Europe. There was nothing like this here, and of course the Watchtower Society had to wait before launching an all-out attack like the one we had engineered in Germany in 1926. The Society was determined to bide its time, to build up slowly their organization methods from the inside out, carefully training personnel for future action. Then, in 1929, came its golden opportunity. For almost 4 years, America was in the pond of despair of the Great Depression. This was a godsend for the Society. And of course, it claimed that the Depression was another sign of the end of the world. This Depression created a vast pool of people who were never again to feel secure in the workings of the American system. Even today, after years of prosperity, millions are still haunted by the ghosts of the Big Depression. Here, vast pools of troubled waters were forming, and soon it would be good fishing for the Watchtower Society. Here was a vast class of dissatisfied people, as if it were tailor-made for the Society's purpose. Next time I rejoin the ranks. I'll put in a link to the testimony of Harold Bloom. He was never a Jehovah's Witness, but he happens to be America's best-known literary critic of the last generation, and he wrote quite a bit in a book I read years ago with great relish called The American Religion. He's talking there about not only the main denominations that constitute the peculiarly American religion, but also of the cults. He rather likes the Mormons, but he does not like Jehovah's Witnesses, and he made several very pertinent comments about the difference between cults in his analysis of Mormonism, Adventism, and Jehovah's Witnesses. So I think there's 2 or 3 videos here that will be attached together. I'll put the first Harold Bloom commentary on Jehovah's Witnesses on your screen. See you next time.